Okay, I am back on my porch and I want to talk about kind of a follow up from yesterday's video on my little girl asking me if God would kill babies or if God would send someone to kill babies on his behalf. And long story short, I simply asked her if she thought he would do that, and she said no. She said it hesitantly. She was very reverent about it. She has trusted Jesus and really been, uh, she's really loved God since she was born. I mean, it's kind of odd saying that, but we've raised her in the faith and she has just kind of come along and really trusted Jesus. So when I was asking her these questions, or she brought them up to me, I wanted to be very hesitant on how to answer them. And here's a couple of thoughts I think that come to mind. One, I've said these things before to people. We tend to think that we have to teach the other side of the story. So, what I mean by that is this: my little girl at the time was, I think, 8 years old. And when she asked this question, my thoughts, and I've thought about this a lot since then, my thought was, okay, well, I have to teach her something contrary to what she feels is true about a God who is love. And that means for that scenario, and with that question in mind, her natural instinct is to think that God would never kill babies and that he would never send someone to kill babies. That was her natural instinct. I didn't teach her these things. We had never talked about this story before. So, what people are saying outside of this is that I should have trained her or indoctrinated her to believe that, oh no, baby, little girl, you're wrong about this. God, even though he's love, he's also just. So yeah, he had really good reasons to go kill these babies and these women. At 8 years old, you're telling me that I should have told my little girl this. And when you think about these things in a relational way, in a real way, we are asking people to believe in a God who would kill babies, while at the same time, we will pitch a fit about people aborting babies. And I'm pro life. I'm pro life from the womb to the tomb, as they would say. But we will harp and we will protest and we will do all the things to take up for people killing babies, or not take up for them, but to stand up for the babies, to say no, killing babies is wrong, while at the same time going to church and worshiping a God that we say has every right to kill babies. That to me, after I posted yesterday and after I've talked to some people about this, that to me is absurd. And I can't help but to think about it in any other way. I don't know how to think about a God of the Christian faith that I have grown to love and adore and revere and worship and follow, that God, that I have to believe that he would go and kill all the babies. It sounds psychotic to me. I mean, truly, it sounds psychotic to me. The second thing that comes to my mind is the pushback saying, well, that's what the scriptures say, and you're just trying to come up with a modern, uh, a modern way, a man-centered way to read the scriptures. And I'm actually saying, no, I'm not. Um, I'm simply saying that through Jesus, we have an interpretive lens in which we are to read the scriptures now. That when Peter actually talked about the flood, when Peter talked about the flood, he actually reinterpreted that story in an allegorical way. And he says, now, just like Noah and his family was saved through the waters, now baptism saves you. So now Peter took this same story that the people were used to hearing. He took this story of supposedly God killing off all humanity. And Peter takes that story and he reinterprets it through the life of Jesus, through the Jesus way, which is the way of Jesus, the life of Jesus, the Christian life. Jesus did the same thing with multiple passages. So now Jesus is teaching guys how to read these passages with him in view. So now what I would say is, the pushback that I get is, well, if you would just trust the scriptures. And I would say, well, I do just trust the scriptures. I just don't trust them in the interpretive way that you're reading them. You are saying, many people say, that the literal way of reading the scriptures is the actual kind of true north. It's the way to read it. But that is an opinion. That is not the historic way of reading scriptures. It is a way the historic church read the scriptures, but it is not the only way. And I would argue it was not the most important way. The most important way would be a way like Peter. Peter saying, listen, this story was told about Noah and his family and the waters coming up over the ark. But I want to say this, the story actually means that now baptism saves you. And this is not a baptism debate right now. It's not a baptism discussion. But what I'm saying is the true north way of reading scriptures is to see Jesus and the life of Jesus, not his personal life on earth, but the life of Jesus, the life of a Christian living this faith out. The interpretive way is to look at these stories and say, how can I see Jesus in this? How can I see this way of love, loving God, loving others? How can I see this story of God actually coming down and dealing with sin and restoring and redeeming and setting things right? And that is, to me, the most important way. And that's not just my opinion. This is what I'm seeing in the early church, in the historic church. That is the way that the scriptures are meant to be read first and foremost. Now, did the flood happen? Well, let's talk about it. Let's look at the archaeology. Let's look at the science. Let's look at all the things that surround that story and see if it actually happened. Some say no, some say yes. Okay, great. But the story is there in the sacred text, so we have to do something with it. And here's what I'm not willing to do. I am not willing to worship a God who kills babies. It's crazy to me. I mean, I don't know how, and I don't know why taking up this belief, like, to me, for me to have to sort of take up and defend myself with this view, it honestly sounds crazy to me that the Christian world majoritively is taking up for God killing babies. And then a minority that, let's say I'm in, is taking up for the Christian God not killing babies. Like, I could be wrong. but I just don't see how. I don't see how the Christian God can do that. And I would even go so far as to say that he is actually unable to do it because he is first and foremost love. That his wrath and his justice and all the things that he has to do to deal with sin and evil are filtered through love, meaning it's restorative, it's corrective. So he can't just kill off someone because of sin. That is not a high view of God. That is not a high view of sin. He actually has to deal with sin, deal with the person, restore and redeem the situation and the people and the persons involved, and set it right. That is, to me, a higher view of God and a higher view of sin and justice and wrath and whatever else you want to call it. So that, I don't know. That's my thoughts on this. I do get a passionate about this because I just can't. I've come to the conviction that I'm not going to follow a God who kills babies and women, while at the same time he tells us to turn the other cheek and to welcome the children. That it's actually better for you to be dragged down to the bottom of a lake and drowned to death rather than cause a little one to stumble. Yet here he is killing babies, and in Psalms, bashing babies' heads against a rock, and us being like, oh Lord, thank you so much. You're so good. Okay, I'll stop now.